One, Kamala on the attack. She plans to get aggressive with Donald Trump, the tight wire that they both need to walk. The needle, I think, that they need to thread in the first and only debate for the presidency. Two, we break it all down. Get you ready with 2012 presidential candidate Newt Gingrich and the host of the Ben Domenech podcast, editor-at-large at the Transom, Ben Domenech. Three, body cam video. More evidence. Now the opportunity for a responsible take in the detainment of Tyreek Hill. Plus, was the Haitians eating cats and ducks story a hoax? Coming up on The Will Cain Show. It is The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, terrestrial radio market-to-market, and always on demand by subscribing at Apple or Spotify, or subscribe to The Will Cain Show on YouTube. We got a big show with many guests today to take you up to a big night in the race for the presidency, a night that I think is unpredictable, making it not unlike a sporting event. Speaking of sports, first week of results in for the Will Cain Show Fantasy Football League. Bad week for your host. Good week for Fox News legal analyst Andy McCarthy. Good week for Major League Baseball former star A.J. Przinsky. We'll break it all down, let you know the standings here, who did well in week one of the Will Cain Show Fantasy Football League. Plus, a lot of you were really upset, about the potential for this topic. In fact, Patrick in Charlotte, a longtime listener to the Will Cain Show, emailed, texted, commented into the show, if Will puts Dan effing Deerdorf in his top 5 color commentators of all time, I'm going to stop watching this show. This in a conversation about how much improvement is ahead of Tom Brady. Could he ever climb? He's the greatest quarterback of all time. What would he have to do to become the greatest color commentator of all time? Led to a discussion of who are the top 5 color commentators. I got a lot of suggestions from you folks. And in the brainstorming session, I tried to remember, you remember the people who were the voices, the sounds of your childhood. And I tried to remember the color commentator on ABC's Monday Night Football. It was Dan Deerdorf. So I guess you're going to have to just hang in one more episode for Patrick from Charlotte to find out whether or not I place Dan Deerdorf in my top 5 color commentators of all time. Also, we're going to get you updated quickly on Will versus the experts. Me picking college and pro football games against the experts every Friday here on the Will Cain Show. What's my record? We're 2 weeks in. How am I doing versus the experts? I'll make my picks for week 3 of college football, week 2 of the NFL a little bit later this week. I really don't like that it's different weeks for each sport. I need to just be able to say week X, and it means the same for college and pro football. But we've got a big night of unpredictability, not in the world of sports, but in the world of the race for the presidency. The first and only debate for the United States president. Tonight, with story number 1. Reports indicate that Kamala Harris's tactic going into this debate will be to go on the attack, to be aggressive. Advice from former presidential candidate, losing presidential candidate, which I would think then any piece of advice should come with a healthy, not grain, but shaker of salt. Hillary Clinton is that she can rattle, and she should try to rattle Donald Trump. The truth is, I think this is good advice, and it sounds like sound strategy for Kamala Harris. She should go on offense. Here's why. Defense is a bad place to be in politics. Defense and defending yourself, explaining, losing. Go on the offense. If Kamala Harris is on her heels and constantly trying to explain her policy inconsistencies, her flip-flops, if she's forced to fill the void of open space, ad lib, impromptu, this is where she fails. This is where her phoniness is revealed. And I do think that she is phony. I think her policy prescriptions, by the way, interestingly laid out by Bernie Sanders in an interview this weekend when pressed like, hey, why has she abandoned all these progressive principles she's held throughout her career now that she's in a general election for president? Sanders basically said, it's phony. It's a lie. She's doing it to get elected to the presidency. So whether or not it's policy or honestly her laugh or her general persona, I do think there is so much that is fake, just flat phony. And when you're on your heels and you're playing defense, that is when you're rattled. I've told you guys, my sons play soccer. It's so interesting to watch kids. I went to practice last night. Soccer is such a confident sport, but all sports are. But soccer, I think, at an enhanced level is about confidence. If you're feeling good about who you are, then you're on offense. You're on your toes. You're not caught. You're not reacting. One of my sons is in a really good spot. The other has a broken leg. But one of my sons is in a really good spot. He's just feeling confident. And his game is like, twofold over what it is when he's worried about the coach, about a mistake. Kamala Harris has got to be the same way. If she's worried, if she's defensive, it's only going to compound her mistakes. But if she's on her front foot, if she's attacking Donald Trump, she gets to control more of the narrative. She advances her ball. And I'll tell you, she also, I have to say, Hillary Clinton is right, has the potential to rattle Donald Trump. And how do I mean that? Well, force him into his weakness. Because for him, the loss is to come out of this debate, honestly, coming off as an a-hole. That's the truth. That's blunt. That's not eloquent. But when you bore down to it, that's what it's all about. Can she make him look like an a-hole? Because that's how people vote, at least the people that haven't yet decided how they will vote. How do I feel about these two people? And if you're a bully, if you're mean, you turn off these people who aren't there for the policies because the policies are already there. Anyone who wants can know the policies. So this is going to be about how they feel. And if she can go on the attack, if she can push and then force him to overcorrect and push back, a sound strategy for Kamala Harris. Now, this is where it's tough. It's tough for Donald Trump. Is he has to push her. He has to put her on defense. He has to rattle her. He has to get her insecure so that she starts floundering and word salading and revealing her phoniness. He has to be able to do that without coming off as a bully. And that is tough when you're dealing with a woman. Man, I've done a lot of debating. I have. On television, in front of public audiences. And I've also hosted shows, which aren't necessarily debate shows, ensemble, where the truth is, if you interrupt a woman, you are judged differently than if you interrupt a man. That's just the truth. I'm not here for should or shouldn't. I'm telling you what is or isn't. And you come off, especially to women, as a jerk. If I interrupt Rachel Campos Duffy, the feelings around me are very different than if I interrupt Pete Hegseth. If I push back aggressively on Stephen A. Smith, really aggressively, as you can see from any old clip of First Take, I can pull that off way, way more charismatically than if I push back on Molly Karam, the moderator of First Take. Now, Donald Trump has done a good job of this in a lot of realms. He's also, I think, been overly aggressive at times that have pushed away those feeling voters. And that's the tight wire that he has to walk, the needle he has to thread. And it's going to be very difficult. My suspicion is his plan going in is to be calm, to be a lot like he was with Joe Biden. But Joe Biden was going to implode regardless of Donald Trump's presence. Kamala Harris needs Donald Trump's presence to some extent to obviously implode. And that's going to be tough for Donald Trump. And I think it will be tough. The needle thread and the tight wire is not just for Donald Trump. It's going to be tough for Kamala Harris to stay on offense. It's possible Donald Trump remains calm and she comes off like a jerk. It could happen, I mean, I just saw a debate between Charlie Kirk and some girl over abortion. It was just a viral clip on X. And the lady, I say girl, she's very young. She literally did "I'm speaking." And she said it, I think, no less than 6 or 7 times and super aggressively. And it's a massive turnoff. I'm speaking. She did it while Charlie kept trying to talk. And so she wasn't just interrupting him. She was over-talking him on the I'm speaking. And trust me, she loses the feeling in that debate. So Kamala Harris could be over-aggressive. It's going to be fascinating, unpredictable, and not easy, I think, for either candidate in the race for president. But we're going to break it all down with a couple of experts. The host, the editor of the Transom, the editor at large at The Spectator, the host of the Ben Domenech podcast, Ben Domenech, friend of the show, probably should be in our fantasy league, Ben Domenech, and former House Majority Leader, 2012 presidential candidate, Newt Gingrich, coming up on The Will Cain Show. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation honors fallen heroes by supporting their families. Families like that of U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer Shane Michael Barnes. Officer Barnes enlisted in the Marine Corps in 2011, earning numerous awards, including the Distinguished Flying Cross. He cherished the camaraderie of military service and excelled as a supportive leader. During a 2023 deployment, Barnes perished in a training flight when his aircraft crashed into the Mediterranean Sea. He leaves behind his wife, Brandy, and their 2 children. To honor Officer Barnes' memory and service, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation provided Brandy and her children with a mortgage-free home through their Gold Star Family Home Program. And this program provides mortgage-free homes to the families of fallen service members, honoring their sacrifice with a lasting tribute. You can join Tunnel to Towers on its mission to provide mortgage-free homes to America's heroes and the families they leave behind by donating $11 a month to T2T.org. That's T2T.org. Donate now. Ben Domenech and Newt Gingrich on the debate for the presidency. Next on The Will Cain Show.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
That heat's going to be out there for one more day.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com. Trump.
She's a radical left Marxist, and she'll destroy our country.
Harris.
Unlike Donald Trump, I will always put the middle class first.
The ABC presidential debate simulcast on Fox News Radio with Democracy 24 pre- and post-debate reporting and analysis. Hosted by Jaron Halpern and Jessica Rosenthal. The ABC presidential debate simulcast on Fox News Radio. Listen starting at 8 p.m. tonight at foxnewsradio.com and on the Fox News app.
I'm Dana Perino. This week on Perino on Politics, it's a tied race and someone or something has to break it. This week, I'm joined by former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to discuss what the candidates need to do in order to change the standings of this tight race. Right now, Trump looks to be in the lead, both nationally and in the Electoral College. Can he keep that lead? We shall see. Available now on Apple, Spotify, and FoxNewsPodcasts.com.
Body cam footage of the detainment of Tyreek Hill keeps coming out. New angles, new videos. And as opposed to yesterday when the take was wait and get evidence and be responsible, now we have the ability for a responsible take. We're going to break all that down with Outkick's Bobby Burack coming up in a little bit here on The Will Cain Show. Streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page. Just hit subscribe. It's going to be an episode you want to go back, you want to listen to as it gets you ready for the 2024 debate for the presidency at Apple or Spotify or on YouTube. Why you want to listen to this episode, help me break it down? Because we have 2012 presidential candidate, the host of Newt's World, Gingrich 360. It's a podcast. And the host of the Ben Domenech podcast. He's also the Fox News contributor, editor-at-large, The Spectator, and the editor of the Transom, Ben Domenech. Gentlemen, great to have you here on the Will Cain Show. Ben, and for that matter, Newt, I don't know. We should have had you in the Fantasy Football League. Newt, are you I don't know. You're a sports guy, Newt, right?
Well,
he's a Steelers fan.
We have a share of Green Bay stock, so we have a vested interest. And Sao Paulo was tough.
Oh, you're a Green Bay Packers fan. But Newt, you're from – now, I have a lot of really strong opinions, and I judge character harshly on this type of thing. You're from Georgia. Give me an excuse for you being a fan of the Green Bay Packers.
Because it's America's team.
When I was a graduate
what is it,
student,
Newt?
My closest friend in graduate school was a Dallas Cowboy fan, and every year I got a case of beer off of him, thanks to Vince Lombardi.
Where was this in school? Where did you go to school?
That's at Tulane. He and I were both
Tulane. Oh.
It was a tough life.
I would have liked to have seen 20. Yeah, I was going to say, I'd like to see 20-something-year-old Newt, Green Bay Packers fan, America's team roommate in the streets of Bourbon Street in New Orleans. That's a different. I don't know if he's different. It's a different image than the. It's different than the 2012 presidential candidate.
I turned down Duke and a variety of other schools when Tulane made an offer because I wanted to live in New Orleans. And I was right.
Of course.
It was great.
I think you were. Little people don't realize this. Duke is just a northeastern school situated in the South. It's full of New Yorkers. And that's nothing wrong with that, but that's just what it is. All right, Newt Gingrich, Ben Domenech here on the Will Cain Show. Ben, with all due respect, I am going to start with the guy that ran for the president. Sat on this debate stage.
Look, I read Domenech's transcript every morning. You can ask Ben first. I read all of his stuff.
So I don't. Oh, so you're just going to repeat stuff that Ben's already written? I don't want to hear that.
Yes.
And I don't think it's true. Newt, you jumped on. They told me when you jumped on the Zoom, so you might have not heard my monologue, my lead up to bringing you guys in. I think this is really tough for Trump. And I don't think it's easy for Kamala Harris. I think it's tough debating a woman. I think it's tough trying to put her on the defensive without coming off like a bully. What do you think about tonight and the strategy for Donald Trump?
I think Trump is the best debater I've ever seen. I mean, including Reagan. I think Trump's intuitive skills, I'm always very cautious in advising him on debates because his instinct, I mean, look at how he demolished Jeb Bush or go down the list. Look how he handled, people talk about him debating a woman. He debated Hillary. Now Hillary was a thug, and so he could be much tougher. Kamala is not a Hillary quality thug. So he's got to be a little more careful. On the other hand, look at how he calmly and pleasantly allowed Joe Biden to destroy himself in June. I mean, the more disciplined Trump was, the more Biden destroyed himself. So I have no idea which version of Trump will show up tonight, but I do know that while he doesn't do this hide in Pittsburgh preparation stuff, he has been preparing for this for 6 or 8 weeks, all day, every day. He's been thinking, does this work? Does that work? If I do this, what will she do? I'm looking forward tonight. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen. But I think,
one more for you.
Much harder
one more for you, Newt. One more for you, Newt. So I totally respect, I like what you have to say about his instincts because it's true. And I've been with Donald Trump. He told me about some of the advice that he got in debate prep in 2016. And the truth is the advice wouldn't have been good. And he just did what was instinctual for him, and it worked. And I appreciate and respect that. But you've been in there. Do you think Donald Trump? We know all three of us have probably been around Donald Trump to some extent to know I know he cares what people think. Meaning he asks you what you think often, and he'll ask a common person as much as an expert what they think about the steak at Bedminster, about this, about that. He cares. Do you think he'll care like in debate prep? To your point, like if somebody says, "Now, Mr. President, if you do it that way, you're coming off as really abrasive to Tulsi Gabbard standing in for Kamala Harris." That's who's playing the role of Kamala Harris. And we have polling over here, or we have a Frank Luntz type figure saying it plays poorly. Is it in Donald Trump, like he hears that, he listens to that and goes, okay, how can I adjust going into the debate?
I think the guy who did 13 years of The Apprentice thinks he has a pretty good notion of what TV audiences like. And I think he listens to everybody. He puts it through this extraordinary brain of his, and he intuits what he should do. And I mean, he and I have exactly the same debate prep model. When we had our first debate with Fox in 2012, Calista and I got Diet Cokes and watched Bridesmaids. That was my debate prep. I know exactly why. I know exactly why he's not flying into the last minute, because he doesn't want to get tense. He doesn't want to think about it.
Right.
He wants to. He has a lifetime of preparation. He doesn't have to study who is Kim Jong-un or, what is Putin like. I mean, she has never done anything except be a lawyer. She was a lawyer as a DA. She was a lawyer as an attorney general. She behaved like a lawyer in the Senate. She's never run anything. Trump has a lifetime of experience, and I suspect he's kind of looking forward to this, and we'll see. And I think he will intuit what the ABC reporters are like and what she is like, and in his own head, he'll have a model of the notional American watching the debate, and he will behave in a way designed to move that person to dismiss Kamala as a possibility.
So, Ben, did you write all that in the transom this morning? Did he just regurgitate what you've written already?
No, I wouldn't pretend to. Obviously, Newt has way more experience on the debate stage than I do, but I have done a good bit of debate prep over the years. And what I would be saying to the former president right now is restraint. Use virtually the same approach that you had to that June debate, because the reality for us in this moment as Americans is that the people who are going to decide this election haven't really decided who Kamala Harris is yet. And I think that if she has some pretty basic questions given to her, then I think that she is going to tie herself into knots. It's not going to be the same degradation that we saw from Joe Biden, but it's going to be something that I think is not going to be advantageous to her campaign. We've already seen her momentum stall. We've already seen the fact that this convention didn't result in any significant bump for her. The polls are effectively tied. And I think that if ABC's moderators do anything approaching their job, certainly I think we were pleasantly surprised at the way that CNN approached this, of asking basic questions that matter to the American people about the economy, about security, about the border, about foreign policy, then I think she's going to be put into a really tough position. Now, for the former president, I think you're right, Will. He needs to avoid coming across as nasty, as bullying, as aggressive, or anything along those lines. Part of the disadvantage for him is I know this is sort of a silly thing, but he's almost a foot taller than Kamala Harris. They're going to be on stage together in a way that they haven't been before. And so the danger optically is coming across as if you are badgering someone or something like that. And I think that that's the real thing he just needs to avoid. If he gives
that's interesting, Ben, the visual.
Yeah.
That's interesting, the visual.
So
in their rule, Ben, in the past, they've said we've never had a president under a certain height, and but we've only ever really analyzed that through the prism of men. I've never thought about that as applied to women. How tall is Kamala Harris?
Kamala Harris is 5'5" in heels, so that's it's quite a bit of a difference.
I think she's actually 5'4".
Yeah,
I think she says she's 5'4".
Well, everybody gives himself an inch. Everybody gives themselves an inch, Newt.
Well,
you know the NFL Combine. You know the way this works.
But if you looked at her last appearance with Biden, where Biden puts his arm around her, she leans up against him and closes her eyes and is resting her head on his shoulder. She looks like she's the teenage girl he's comforting. I mean, it's not a shot I would have wanted if I were her managers.
Well, but I also think
go ahead, Ben.
one of the things that we are going to run into here is just the basic problem of if you are the bigger guy on stage optically, it just looks like you're being way more aggressive than you are. And I think that that's the thing that he needs to avoid, because you can see there's so many different ways for him to challenge her, so many questions that he could put to her. But I think he just needs to have an approach that's restrained and that's serious, and that picks himself as the candidate of seriousness and change, and her as the candidate of this is the last 4 years, except dumber and stupider and more unreliable.
All he's got to do is ask her if Sanders was right on Sunday when Sanders said she was pretending to give up her beliefs to get through the election. He just has to say, do you agree with Bernie Sanders?
We just talked about that.
Accurate?
So a couple of quick thoughts on what you guys have said so far. So, Ben, I love that you brought out the visual. And Newt, you'll know this better than me. And I can't remember who said it, but I've often quoted, it's been attributed to Ronald Reagan's communication advisor that it's 70% how you look, 20% how you sound, and only 10% what you have to say. So I love, Ben, that you bring up the importance of the visual aspect of it. Newt, you brought up that he's done it in the past with a woman, with Hillary, and I appreciate that. You even put the caveat in there. I just think Hillary's different. She's so unlikable that you could be as aggressive as you wanted, and Kamala's just not on that same level of unlikability. But my question to you, Newt, will be, my buddy Pete Hegseth pointed this out. They put answers at 2 minutes, and Pete was like, that's a long time. And that plays to Donald Trump's advantage to make Kamala speak extemporaneously for 2 minutes. Well,
it's a huge disadvantage for Trump. I mean, the idea of a 2-minute answer is so constricting that his natural length is 7 to 12 minutes. So he's going to have to really edit himself to be down at 2.
Right.
And I'll bet he gets cut off a couple of times during the evening because he just starts rolling.
Right.
You know, and when he's rolling,
right.
You know, time flies when you're having fun. You know, I just want to make a point that I used to make back before the Biden-Trump debate in June. The debate's important, particularly for those of us who care about politics, although I noticed this morning only 44% of the American people are aware that there's a presidential debate. 56% of the country does not know what's going on. And that's because politics is not that central to most people's lives. But here's the point I made before the June debate. 2 days after the debate, people will go to the grocery store and they will remember that the Biden-Harris program raised the price of beef 26% since they got in office, raised the price of gasoline, raised the price of everything. And they'll be back where they were. And Trump's base is around 48 or 49%. And that's after everything they've done to him. Her base is actually around 42, and people just don't realize it yet. But if you really look at the underlying value questions, she's at about 42. And she's got a real problem because the people she's currently getting that are the extra 6 or 8 don't know who she is. Mm-hmm. And the more they start learning who she is, this is Dukakis and McGovern all over again.
So can I just point out one more thing that I think is
remember,
really
Dukakis was up 17 points. 17 points coming out of the Democratic convention. She was up either 1 or 2. And if you're a Democrat in the Electoral College, if you're not up at least 4, you're losing because all your whole margin is California. In California, I mean, once you carry California, and the next 100,000 or 500,000 votes is irrelevant. And that's why I knew Hillary would lose, because her margin in California and New York was so big, and Illinois. Those are the three places you get the huge national margin. And frankly, if we went to a popular vote model, Republicans would advertise in those 3 states, and they'd get a much bigger vote. So there's a certain misleading notion that we don't do well in certain places. We don't even show up anymore. You say, fine, you get an extra 500,000 there. We'll take the Electoral College.
Ben?
Which is why, of course, they want to get rid of it. The point that I wanted to make that I find to be very interesting going into this debate, Will, is Pew is out with their latest round. They do these sort of scheduled rounds of massive polls that they do that look at different issues. And what they found in terms of priorities, voter priorities, is that obviously the same consistent thing has happened here, where we've got the economy, immigration, and then security concerns, which are sort of either domestically crime or foreign policy wise, instability around the world. These issues have been the top, and they've been consistently the top for 2 years now. The interesting thing to me about the Pew poll was that while Kamala Harris has an advantage on the abortion issue, it's a much smaller advantage than I think people would realize. It's 55 to 44, which actually says to me that's a huge problem for her. If she wants this to be a culture war election where there's going to be some kind of sweeping youth vote that's going to come in and elevate her, some kind of effectively the repeat of the 2022 cycle in many ways. That's not what is developing in front of us right now. What is developing in front of us right now is an election that's about fundamentals. Trump is really good when it comes to these fundamental issues. I think the more that he sticks to that, the better. And in terms of the kind of radical nature that Newt was just talking about, Dukakis, McGovern, et cetera, I don't know if you've seen it, but the visual of Aaron Burnett expressing shock that Kamala Harris endorsed transgender surgery for illegal migrants. She actually did that. Yes, she actually did. She took all these crazy positions. My only question is going to be, are these moderators going to ask any of the questions about this? Like, do you still
No,
believe?
I think that's why Aaron
And I
Burnett
don't think they are.
resonated, because it was such a rarity. No, they won't.
Yeah, I think that they will avoid those.
No.
But that to me means that Trump is going to have to find ways to bring those up to basically establish
Himself.
I am the candidate of the economy, of the border, of security at home and around the world. And she is the candidate of crazy, loony, lefty, Berkeley ideas. She may pretend to be from Oakland, but she's from Berkeley.
Well, let me suggest a real-time, real-life, what could become the biggest symbol of the campaign, and that's Springfield, Ohio. Springfield has 20,000 Haitian refugees. It is collapsing as a city. And if Springfield and to a lesser extent Aurora, Colorado, which has a Venezuelan gang that is literally on TV with guns breaking into an apartment, those are the kind of things that suddenly the country says enough. And I think if that sinks in, and the question becomes, vote Harris and get more Springfield, bring Springfield to your town. You too could have 50,000 refugees, thanks to Kamala. That truly sinks in. This will be much closer to a Dukakis or McGovern race.
Yeah, we broke that down yesterday, that story. In fact, we're going to revisit it again today in the third segment with Outkick's Bobby Burack, the story of Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. All right, I know Ben has to go, I don't know if he has to record something or pick up a child, but he's got to go at 12:30 Eastern time. And Newt has all kinds of important things to do, like perhaps record the Newt's World Gingrich 360 podcast. Also, while you're there, subscribe to the Ben Domenech podcast. I really appreciate you guys hopping on and doing this with us today in advance of the debate. Thank you, Newt. Thank you, Ben.
Take care.
One more note on the timing of the answers, the 2-minute length. Newt brought up it could hurt Trump because he'll get cut off. One thing that anybody's interviewed Trump knows, it's hard for the casual listener, casual viewer to experience this for the first or maybe even the third time. And certainly the national media twisted into long, crazy rants. But this is the format of a Trump answer. Begin to answer the question, indulge multiple parentheticals and streams of consciousness, but does almost always, and to Newt's point, it may be 7 minutes later, but almost always comes back to the original question to answer it. I mean, he goes around the world twice, but he does come back into port. He does bring the ship back home to harbor. And so you've got to hang in there. And so I think there's a chance, though, the 2 minutes reduces the trips around the world, reduces the parentheticals in his mind, I hope, because that's where they're like, oh, stream of consciousness, rambling, crazy. What's he talking about? Eating ducks in Springfield. He'll come back around to that Kamala Harris endorsed bringing 100,000 Haitians into the country in 2021 as vice president. All right, let's continue this debate prep. We'll revisit the Haitian story, the refugee migrant story from Springfield, Ohio. And we've got new evidence in the detainment of Tyreek Hill, plus a mailbag of your involvement, the Willisha. Coming up with Outkick's Bobby Burack here on The Will Cain Show.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Listen to the all-new Bret Baier podcast featuring Common Ground, talking to lawmakers weekly from opposite sides of the political spectrum about the issues of the day and how Americans can find common ground in a politicized world.
That's just not happening on Capitol Hill. It takes leadership, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Along with all your Bret Baier favorites like the campaign, the candidates, the all-star panel, and much more. Available now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Trump.
She's a radical left Marxist, and she'll destroy our country.
Harris.
Unlike Donald Trump, I will always put the middle class first.
The ABC presidential debate simulcast on Fox News Radio with Democracy 24 pre- and post-debate reporting and analysis. Hosted by Jaron Halpern and Jessica Rosenthal. The ABC presidential debate simulcast on Fox News Radio. Listen starting at 8 p.m. tonight at foxnewsradio.com and on the Fox News app. The world of business moves fast. Stay on top of it with the Fox Business Rundown. Every Monday and Friday, Fox Business reporters, anchors, and hosts will bring you beneath the stock market speculation and boardroom drama to tell you about the biggest business stories of today. Whether you're on Main Street or Wall Street, Fox Business is invested in you. Listen to the Fox Business Rundown every Monday and Friday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
Shadow banned on YouTube says the media will make sure to avoid wide shots that show Kamala Harris and Donald Trump together. They'll also use angles when they have to show them together to de-emphasize the difference, talking about height. I wonder if she'll also stand on like a, clear plastic apple box type thing as well. I think that comment by Shadow Band is correct. It's not going to be a visual. Ben Domenech of the Ben Domenech podcast just talked to us about the visual difference of Trump being a foot taller. Don't underestimate that. That's not pettiness. Visual is important. But I agree with this comment. You're probably not going to get a lot of that visual at tonight's ABC presidential debate. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live on YouTube, the Fox News YouTube page, on Facebook, the Fox News Facebook page, but always on demand, Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Let's break down the debate. Let's break down Tyreek Hill. Let's break down the Springfield, Ohio story, plus some of your comments with Outkick's Bobby Burack here on the Will Cain Show. What's up, Bobby? By the way, Bobby's got a brand new column up at Outkick. It's not brand new. It's a week or so old. He was texting me about it last night. I'd actually read it already, Bobby, and I was at a soccer practice for my son. Sometimes I'm a horrible text responder, and it's not personal. So I was sitting at practice, and during warm-ups, when they just pass around, I was reading the column, And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to text Bobby back, and I actually screenshot some of my favorite parts of the column. But then the scrimmage started, and I started watching the scrimmage of practice. And my favorite parts, Bobby, were you said free speech is on the ballot. This is a free speech election. Is you pointing out that Keith Ellison, Tim Walz's Attorney General in Minnesota, openly embraced internet censorship in Brazil. He said, Obrigado, Brazil. And that you can't have a true democracy if you don't have free speech. It's just antithetical.
Yeah, and first of all, excuse me, I'm nasally. I'm always nasally at this time for whatever reason. So what made this point to me so important to make is that imagine, Will, because what free speech does above all else, it allows us to find the truth. Without free speech, we would be beholden to the information that the government and the powers that be let us have access to. We had a glimpse of that during the pandemic when people weren't allowed to put out differing opinions or even facts that they could back up. And you saw what happened. People were duped. They were deceived into believing the vaccine could do this, that mask could do this, that the pandemic was some natural cause from bats in Wuhan. We saw what happens when normal people are not allowed to find the truth by themselves. And that's so concerning to me, given that once we found out that Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the Biden-Harris administration was pressuring him to censor content and take down posts critical of the administration, that not a single Democrat, from my knowledge, has come out and condemned, government-pressured censorship, which the Constitution, by rule, prohibits. But what you have here is the White House finding a workaround by strong-arming social media companies to do the censoring for them.
Well, I will say Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, RFK, all self-described former Democrats. And I believe the senator from Oregon, is it Ron Wyden, has been a pretty good defender of free speech as well. So, but your point's taken. I just am pushing back on the not a single Democrat. But your point's taken because overwhelming. The overwhelming majority and the prevailing ethos of the Democratic Party is now in favor of censorship. Definitely. And they're never going to say that. They just say moderating misinformation, which is a fancy, flowery way of embracing censorship. Speaking of information that helps us arrive at the truth, Bobby. Yesterday I had Ricky Cobb of the Ricky Cobb Show on Outkick, and we were talking about the Tyreek Hill thing. And I'm not good at social media. I'm just not. And I have a lot of failings, but my biggest failing not my biggest, but my top 5 failing is I don't go immediately and offer my hot take. when all the likes and retweets are racked up. I just don't. And I didn't on Tyreek Hill. And that's not a hey, tell me about your biggest failing, and you go, I'm a perfectionist. I'm not backhanded complimenting myself. I'm saying I just don't do this. And yeah, a longtime listener to the Will Cain Show said my take yesterday of we don't have the evidence, so I don't have a take, and that's the right take. M2 Chalet, who's a longtime listener, took to Twitter and said, Will, I love your podcast, but you left it wide open today on your show. This is excessive force and was not necessary. I'm not a fan of Tyreek as a female because of his prior abuse, but this is not okay by these cops. Nope. Well, now we have more info, Bobby. We have I think 3, 4, 5 different body cam footages from the officers there. And I don't have a great take in terms of satisfactory for everybody because everybody wants me to take 100% one side or the other. But I do think I have the right take, and I think it's the same take as yours. Tyreek disobeyed. First of all, he was going really fast in a construction zone, way outpacing the speed of traffic. Then when the officer says, roll down your window, he does, but then he rolls it back up. They're super dark, tinted out windows, and the officer can't see what's going on. Now it ratchets up, and Tyreek rolls it down a little, and then they drag it, and the officer has enough. Tyreek disobeyed commands, and that's a big one when you can't see in the car. Now the officer's safety is at danger. So I think Tyreek wasn't just rude, he was non-compliant, and he created the spiral. Now, I will say, I do think the officers were egotistical at some point. He's already in handcuffs, and they're shoving him to the ground after that. They're overly aggressive, so they're not they're not perfect. But this isn't race. By the way, they weren't white cops. They were Latino. It's just not what everybody wanted it to be on day one. They want it to be simple. It's not. And the truth is, if you're assigning blame, the majority goes to Tyreek.
Yeah, this whole situation underscores the problem we have with the media and national conversation today is that we're programmed to immediately take a side. The police are guilty. Tyreek's to blame because that is tribalism, and that's what people are rewarded for. There are people who have millions of retweets and comments from Sunday because they jump to those conclusions. But it's not always as black and white, to use a phrase, because in this case, I think both sides are to blame partly. Tyreek Hill initiated this. He was speeding, I believe, 40 miles per hour above the speed limit in a construction zone. That is very, very dangerous. He was rude to police. He was disobedient. He rolled up the window with fully tinted windows, so police had no idea, hey, is he grabbing a gun? Is he taking off? What is he doing? And that started this. Now, at the same time, the police, once they removed him from the car, took it a bit too far when they shoved him to the ground the second time. So the police are not blameless. But if we're going to do a pie chart about who deserves what degree of the blame, I think Tyreek Hill deserves about 70% of it. That's not excusing the police, but this whole idea that Tyreek Hill is a victim of the police officers, that he is an example of the dehumanization of black people, which is what Stephen A. said on Monday, that is such a lie. We have video here that directly debunks that entire narrative.
Spot on. Spot on. Nothing to add. I think I even agree probably with your percentages. 70-30 Tyreek's way. And obviously with that 30, it's not a complete endorsement of the way the officers behaved or to excuse them. I also think, by the way, in the end, this wasn't an assault. They were over aggressive. So we're kind of we're dealing with a situation where it's not as though some big horrible thing took place, but it is, if you're going, but was it a perfect thing that took place? No, 30% on the officers, 70% on Tyreek that we ended up in this situation.
Yeah, and I thought the worst thing the cops did was when they went after his teammate and they're like, give me your ID right away. That was excessive. That was unnecessary, and that seemed like a way to feed the ego. But overall, this whole idea that the police officers need to be fired for what? You're on leave. Okay, that's protocol. Maybe you have a talk with them, tell them what they did wrong. But to fire them over this, I think that would also be excessive.
I think the biggest villain is the ones that did what we talked about. And you and I know all the names that within 24 hours turned this into a way to divide America on the basis of race. and to villainize police. And that's the real villain in this story. I'm just so tired of these people because they have no interest in the facts. None. They have no interest in what happened. They only have an interest in their overarching narrative, and that narrative is inherently divisive, all the more so illustrated by the fact that they have no interest in the facts. They just have a story, and they're looking for other, not incidences, because you can't call it an incident if the facts don't match the incident, other excuses to once again issue indictments on America.
Well, and this is what I call is penning a conclusion before you have the body of the story ready. They see black male police officers and write the conclusion, this is racist, this is police brutality, this must stop, before actually being able to fill out the body of the story. When you become a journalist, you first learn to never do that, yet all these very highly paid journalists do that time and time again.
All right. Bobby Burack covers sports and politics. This might be a good thing to do with him. I think we can bring the guys in militia in New York into this as well if they want to come in. So yesterday I brought up top 5 color commentators. We were talking about Tom Brady and his, where he started and where he has room for improvement. And it was brought up, well, he's the greatest quarterback of all time. What would it take for him to get to be the greatest commentator of all time? And then it was like, well, who are the greatest color commentators of all time? What's the top 5? So here is, Bobby, I just kind of brainstormed it out. Here's the names that we should possibly consider. Okay. Jason Witten, Troy Aikman, Tony Romo, Don Meredith, all Cowboys so far. Greg Olson, John Gruden, Don Meredith, Merlin Olsen, Dan Deerdorf, John Madden. I don't know that I forgot somebody. In New York, two-a-days. Did I forget somebody?
I don't think so. That seemed to be the ones that we saw and everyone was telling us, so I think you're right on there.
What's
okay,
that
so that's
guy's
sort of
name?
like the brainstorm.
Starts with an S. His last name's escaping me.
Not Pat Summerall.
Summerall.
Not Pat Summerall.
Why not him?
No, but he's not
with
the
Madden.
Well, because he's not the color guy.
Yeah.
He's the play-by-play guy.
We're
talking
okay,
about
we're
color
just
guys,
doing color.
you know?
So no, all right, just color.
You said Collinsworth, right?
Okay.
Oh, I forgot Collinsworth.
Yeah,
and Collinsworth's good.
He's
think.
really good. He's one of my favorites.
Here's a guy.
Yeah.
Gruden. Here's a guy.
Now,
I love John Gruden.
A bunch of listeners, Bobby, said if I put Dan Deerdorf in my top 5, and Bobby's too young. I bet Bobby didn't even remember hearing Dan Deerdorf. No. What was Deerdorf? Like 80s and 90s? Monday Night Football? 80s and 90s, probably? Okay, I have my top 5, Bobby. And I'm taking some of my top 5 on reputation and testimony, meaning I didn't get to hear them much. Do you want to listen to mine and rebut, or do you have a top 5 color commentators of all time?
So I'll name my top 5. So number 1, Madden, because of legacy. Number 2, I think we're going to go Aikman because of the longevity, and I think at his peak, he's been the second best after Madden. He and Joe Buck have really impeccable chemistry. Number 3, this is going to be controversial, but when you go back and watch a Super Bowl from the 90s, there's one voice that you keep hearing over and over again. And he does a pretty good job, and that is Phil Simms. I know it ended rocky, but Phil Simms was very good in the color booth during Super Bowl. So I got Madden 1, Aikman 2, and I'm going to go Simms 3. I'll put Collinsworth at number 4. I think he's not quite as good with Trico, but with Al Michaels, he was pretty quirky, funny, and very insightful. So that leaves number 5, which I think is more wide open, and you can go in a lot of different directions. But I'm going to say Gruden because the catchphrases, the accent, his ability to see things from a coach's perspective, I thought is something unique that a lot of the former players don't add. So I'm going to go Madden 1, Aikman 2, Simms 3, Collinsworth 4, and Gruden 5. Your list.
All right. You've got 3 in your top 5 that don't make my top 5.
Oh, wow.
And the only one I would really take issue with is Simms. I listen to Simms a lot. Not a big Phil Simms guy. Don't hate him, just not a big Phil Simms guy. when it comes to the booth, not as a person, when it comes to the booth. Number one is just not debatable. It is John Madden, and everyone knows that. He's the best to ever do it. Now, the next two, I feel a little bit over my skis because I wasn't really around to listen to it. So I'm taking it on a little bit of testimony. It's older than me. Right. But number two is Merlin Olsen. Now, I just think that what I like about Olsen and what I even remembered Deerdorf and brought it up is I think there is value in the offensive and defensive line guys, like the trench guys. I think they have a way of approaching the game that is inherently entertaining. And without that, it is coach or, like if you're just valuing positions, it's coach and quarterback to give me X's and O's in depth of it. But that's not, Madden did that a little bit, but that's not what made Madden special. It was boom, and it was bringing personality into the booth and making football fun. You can make it fun and you can make it smart. The best can make it fun and smart. Now, that brings me to number three. This guy's the opposite of Olsen. He was all fun. Dandy Don Meredith. Like, he was just a good old boy. Talk about accents. Big time Cowboys quarterback, Monday Night Football booth. I think Dandy Don was really entertaining. He's not Charles Barkley, but in the vein of a Barkley-esque type figure, And I go back and forth on 4 and 5. And even as I was talking and I was saying that thing about fun versus making me smart.
Right.
I think I'm going to go Romo 4. I just love his enthusiasm. And it's infectious. And I know that it rubs a lot of people the wrong way and what he's doing for some reason. Like, I feel like his star is dimming a little bit from a few years ago. But I see you nodding two-a-days. I just love his enthusiasm. He gets excited. And I need you to be excited like I'm excited.
Yeah, and the way he came in also and just kind of calling things that were about to happen, the way he looked at the game and could see things, how they were going to happen, it was awesome to watch. Like, when he first came in, I was like, I didn't like him at all, like, as a player, but when he came in, I was like, that is sick, and I love watching this guy and listening to him.
So I got to interject here. My issue with Romo, and this has been pretty well reported, and most people in the industry would say they've heard the same thing. When he first took over and he was immediately the best color commentator in probably all of sports, they talked about how much work he put in preparation. The word on Romo is the last 2-3 years, he hasn't really put in the work, that he doesn't spend a lot of time in the week preparing, and that shows up in the broadcast booth when he repeats himself, he gets names wrong, he uses the same phrase over and over again. I think his lack of preparation, viewers can see and sense that. So to me, that's a major knock on his resume.
That's interesting. And let me tell you something, Bobby knows behind the scenes, especially when it comes to media and sports. So if that's being discussed, if Bobby says that is being discussed in the industry, I promise you. Number 5, I've grown to appreciate him more. Like, look, I had his jersey, so I was going to be biased. But, he just because of that, it didn't vault him immediately to number 1. But number 5 would be Troy Aikman. And, he's just a little dry. But I think over the long haul, as he's done this, you come to appreciate the authenticity of his, he's not trying to be Tony Romo. He's trying to match what somebody else does. He's just giving you, it's just like a solid pitcher who gives you 7 innings, and it may not be strikeout ball, but he's only going to give up a run or two, and you can win with that. And I've come to appreciate that about about Aikman in watching a game. And you're right, Bob. He's been doing it for so long now that he's destined to go down as one of the greatest to ever do this.
Yeah, what's interesting about Aikman, and I never really noticed this when it comes to color commentators as much, but I noticed it on Sunday, and that is, look, in broadcasting originally, voice really mattered. It doesn't matter as much anymore, but it used to. Troy Aikman has a baritone, great broadcast voice. Tom Brady doesn't. Now, Brady might be able to make up for that in other ways. Kirk Herbstreit certainly
I think it matters.
Yeah, so do I. I think it matters. Aikman has that. Collinsworth has that. Tom Brady doesn't. Herbstreit doesn't. Joe Klatt, who does college,
Will Cain doesn't.
Has it. Do you say Will Cain has it? Or
all you have to do does not have it. All you have to do is host with Ryan Russillo for 6 months, and you're going to be like, I feel like the wife in this relationship.
You need the baritone.
Your voice. Yeah, two-a-days has it.
Very white.
Russillo has the deepest, most testosterone-infused voice. Now, and I'm over here with this nasally Texas George W. Bush thing I got going, and it's just not. It's not gravitas.
Well,
now,
I'll give
I
this
will
2
say,
days.
you know how you hate your, you know how you hate your own voice.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard from people the same thing I feel about my voice. I guess people say it is a little unique the way it sounds. It's not generic, but I would offer it's also not Ryan Russillo.
Yeah, I mean, 2 days, you know this as well as anybody because you work with Dan Patrick. Is there anybody that has a better voice than him? It does matter.
I don't
You're
think so.
driving around and you hear Dan Patrick's voice, you stop on the dial.
Exactly. He's one of the most recognizable voices. You don't need the video for the audio. You know what I mean? It's pretty crazy.
What would you I know this is self-indulgent. What would you say about the voice hosting this show, the Will Cain Show?
It's great. It's a wonderful, wonderful
No,
voice.
let her rip. Don't you be a kiss ass 2-a-days. That's the last thing I want you to be on this show. Go ahead, young establishment James.
Well, I've been listening
this
to
will be
it for...
authentic, but it could be
No, it's
totally
I've been listening
ridiculous.
to it for at least an hour a day for 2.5 years, and it's gotten to the point where there's times where it just becomes the inner monologue.
I think,
Yeah,
and I
that's
think
just
your
repetition.
Texas drawl is very endearing and drawing in. It draws you in. So I like the
Well,
accent. It works.
Hold on, not to be the bearer of bad news, but the draw doesn't really work as well because Trey Gowdy does it so well
Oh,
that
wow.
we lose a little bit of appeal with that
Wow.
voice. Like when he was at ESPN, I agree.
That's
but
a
now he's
different.
at Fox.
Trey's got a different draw. That's that South Carolinian Southern syrupy.
Prosecutor.
Prosecutor. That was a good impression. Damn, we just found the one voice that James could do. Holy hell. Mine is more back of your nose, George W. Bush, accent.
Yeah. It's endearing.
Trey's is a prosecutor. Mine is, where's the John Deere tractor?
It's like the difference in British accents. Some sound smart. Some sound like they're a soccer hooligan, you know?
Yeah. That's right. All right. We should do that. That's the next top 5 I want. Best voices. We should do sports and politics. I almost want to do it right now. Russillo's a top 5er in sports. Agreed?
Yeah. I would throw Dan up there biasly, but yeah.
Patrick?
Excuse me, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm talking about nasally. I'm very nasally. Rush Limbaugh, best voice ever. You got to give him. Howard Stern. Stern's got a very distinctive voice. Everybody agree?
Yep.
Yeah.
Stern.
Yeah.
Dan Patrick.
Yep.
Joe Buck.
Yep.
Al Michaels.
I don't like Joe's voice as much.
You don't?
Not
But it's
really.
so ingrained with iconic moments that it almost just has become a gravitas because of what it's been associated
If we're doing
with.
sports and we're throwing those guys in, Pat Summerall, to your point earlier, was one of the best voices. I mean, Pat Summerall's voice is transportive to me. It takes me places and while we're at it, more contemporary, Brad Nessler is great in college football.
Al Michaels.
Keith Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Al Michaels is great. Keith Jackson was awesome.
Glenn Beck.
and
in
then-
politics.
Yeah. By the way, sticking on sports, Gary Danielson doing it now, college football, also great voice.
Jim Nance. Hello, friends.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
We've really thrown a lot of names.
Basketball, TNT.
We're going to have to come up.
Marv Albert.
Marv Albert.
It's a good one.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Let's make a list. We'll do a list and do it another
It's
time.
going to be a long list.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because, Baldo, I think you have to separate play-by-play guys and commentators. So, like, Dan Patrick's in a different category
Radio
than Keith
more.
Jackson.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
put them in the same category. And you don't put Rush Limbaugh in the same category as Donald Trump. So, like, a politician's voice is a different category than Rush's. I love this conversation. We'll figure that out tomorrow here on the Will Cain Show. Bobby, in fact, let's communicate between now and then because I want your input on what those are. Maybe you should write a column for it on Outkick around this.
I agree. I have 2 days pretty high, honestly. I mean, hearing his voice, I think he's right up there.
Thank you so
Certainly,
I know.
of the whole Will issue, I think he is number one. Sorry, Will,
Thank you
James,
so much.
Patrick, but he's got you beat there.
I agree. His voice makes me feel like a bitch.
Yeah.
I just don't want less airtime for Dan.
Yeah, if I was hosting with Dan, I would tell him, hey, Close the mic.
I'll just start talking like this.
All right. Last story with Bobby Burack here. So yesterday we broke it down on the Will Cain Show. Newt Gingrich, just here a minute ago, brought up the Springfield, Ohio Haitian migrant story. 20,000 Haitian migrants in a town of 50,000. The viral story going around is there's a lady who ate a cat, and there's city council testimony of a guy or people grabbing up ducks, okay, and eating, resident park ducks. Now, today, the left is calling it a viral hoax. I don't think they've offered up the evidence. I don't think Politico Playbook or any of these people saying it have offered up the evidence. I had this debate with the guys, Patrick, Dan, and James. This story, and I think we did it right here. I don't know, okay, but I know this. Two things. Somebody getting up at a city council meeting and saying something happened. In this case, a guy saying, I saw people eating ducks. That's not, the word is dispositive. That doesn't prove that it happened. That's one person's testimony. A journalist should require at least one other person to verify it. I saw it too, right? That's sort of been the standard in journalism. In a legal case, you'd want even more because just notoriously testimony is inaccurate. Even eyewitness testimony is inaccurate. Yeah. But it also at the same time is not dismissive. You can't be the mainstream media and going, whoa, that's viral, it's a hoax, it's not real because this guy said it. I'd apply it to the cat eating video as well. The cop with the body cam shows up, there's a dead cat in front of this lady, and somebody off camera says she was eating the cat. We don't see her eating the cat. It's the same thing. That's testimony that I can factor in, but doesn't prove that it happened to me. So I think it's weird in this story. You've got some people dismissing what is evidence, but not strong enough evidence, and others running with it and saying, oh, it's happening because these people said it happened.
Yeah, I'm with you. The people that are just dismissing it, they don't have enough evidence to dismiss it. Now, you could argue, well, if we don't know for sure it happened, we shouldn't run with it. But it's a little bit different than calling it a hoax. Like, I would understand, because I've been in a lot of these discussions before with editors, okay, let's not cite this until we know more. But that's not what they're doing. They are going out of their way to say it's false, but they don't know that.
Right. Well, and on the run with it, that's the trick. You don't run with it and say, this is happening. You say, there are reports this is happening. Because that's what those are. People saying this is happening are reports this is happening.
Or you just don't mention it at all if you don't have verification either way. There's a big difference between not giving validity to a story you can't verify than coming out and saying, hey, this story is a lie. And that's what's bothered me so much about the coverage of COVID is that people would say things and you would have CNN go on air and say, this isn't true. Well, actually, we still don't know if some of that stuff's true. You could say, hey, here's what the reports say. Here's what the reports say, but we can't independently verify it. There's so many ways to go about it, but to jump in and call the people saying liars is also very dishonest.
All right. My phone just died, so I don't have... People have often said, Will, why don't you listen to your guests? I do listen to my guests. They're like, I'm scrolling my phone. I'm not. I have my notes on my phone. Sometimes, like, for example, when I'm listening to Newt get an answer, but I know I need to plug his podcast there at the end, I start looking up what's the name of his podcast one more time. And what I was just looking at here during your last answer, Bobby, was I going to bring up comments from viewers, but my phone just died. I didn't plug it in last night. So we see your comments on YouTube, on Facebook. The guys in the Willisha can bring them in. But I also know, Bobby, you have a mailbag. Is that right? Do you have some things from viewers and listeners here? Give us a couple before we go today on questions you have in your mailbag here on the Will Cain Show.
All right, this is a good one. So this is from Corey from DC. Will and Bobby, what do you make of Nate Silver giving Donald Trump a 64% chance of winning the election and picking him to win all 7 key battleground states?
So, Bobby, I don't know if you jumped on at the beginning of the Will Cain Show to listen to Newt Gingrich, but he made a prediction this is headed towards Michael Dukakis territory. Blowout. And Nate Silver's current, it's 60% to your point. I saw the latest electoral map had it at
64 now, which is even bigger.
And the electoral map was, what is it, like 226 for Kamala, and that puts Donald Trump at like
312.
It's 2-7. Yeah, I don't know, but it's a blowout. Now the people that are dismissing Nate, right? This is what they're doing. They're on the left. They're saying he works for Poly Markets now, which is a betting site, which is owned, I believe, or funded by Peter Thiel.
It is.
I mean, so that's an ad hominem motivational attack on Nate Silver, meaning it's not real. He's doing it for these other nefarious purposes. I don't have any evidence of that. I don't know why that would be the case. Like, why would Nate, by the way, I'll bet you anything, is on the left. His history suggests that. So I don't know why we should question what he believes to be. I said this yesterday. In modern media, you're always accused of whatever you say is what you think should be. So if I come on the show tomorrow and I say Kamala Harris won the debate, all the Donald Trump people will be like, Will's in the tank for Kamala Harris. He's a secret rhino and he's a lefty.
Right.
If I just tell you my analysis of what I think happened, right? It's the weirdest thing to come from the world of sports because I'll be like, the Eagles beat the Packers. And then everybody go, oh, Will just loves the Eagles. He hates the Packers. I'm like, no, that was the score of the game. Now I'll give you subjective versus objective, but I'm going to presume that Nate's being objective, that he's describing reality, not rooting for reality.
Well, I followed Nate Silver for a very long time when he was running 538 at both ESPN and ABC. Now he's independent. A couple of things on that. Silver admits up front that he wanted Biden to win and he wants Kamala Harris to win. He's open about that. Number two, he gives you the measurements and calculations of how his model works. There's nothing in his model that would suggest it's going to lean Republican. In a lot of ways, it actually factors in polling from notoriously left-leaning pollsters. So the idea that he's manipulating the poll in favor of Donald Trump is just not accurate. You can read a Substack about his model. There's nothing in there that suggests he even has the ability to do that if he's using the model he claims he's using. Number three, I don't agree with Silver completely. I think it's very aggressive to say that Donald Trump is going to win Michigan and Wisconsin. I've scoured over all the polls and numbers. I don't believe he's going to win those two states. Now, ultimately, if Trump were to win Pennsylvania, it wouldn't matter. He would still get like 280 electoral votes if nothing else is turned into an upset. But I don't know, Will. I mean, looking at Michigan, Wisconsin, I don't know where Silver is getting the confidence in Trump in those two states.
Yeah. What else do you have, Bobby?
This is a good one. This is from Brian in South Carolina. Speaking of South Carolina, would you guys recommend somebody in college go into sports media or news media? That's a good one.
Yeah.
Want me to go
That's
first?
A good one. Yeah, sure.
So the big problem here is, first of all, I don't know if I'd recommend going into either one of them because they're both oversaturated and not growing. But sports media has become increasingly hard if you're not a former athlete. See, it used to be you graduated, you go work for a newspaper, you work your way up, become a general columnist, then maybe you make it in broadcasting. Now, former athletes jump the line so quickly because they come into the industry with name recognition and credibility. You're not seeing a lot of non-former athletes really rise within sports media. So by default, I would have to say news media. I mean, who is the last person to really break through in sports who didn't play? You'd probably have to go back to, I don't even know, Big Cat, which was probably 8-9 years ago. It's been a while.
Well, so Bobby and I have had a lot of these discussions. News is in a bigger market than sports. It just is. Like the ratings that I experience on Fox and Friends, and people, it's funny when people that used to hate me on ESPN say you've disappeared. Yeah, I mean, okay, my ratings are 3 times the size of what I experienced on First Take, right? First Take. Everybody watches First Take. Really?
5-6 times.
I mean, for Fox and Friends is just like enormously bigger than First Take.
Right.
And people don't realize that because there's this relevance online world that makes you think it's different than it is, but it's not. So news is bigger than sports. Sports is easier to be a business. It's more monetizable than news. And the reason that's important is if you want to, you're asking as a career. So it's got to be a business you're talking about. And advertisers will go on to a sports podcast before they'll go on to a news podcast. That's why when you hear news podcasts, it's often a lot of the same advertisers because, Coors Light isn't going to jump to be a part of political content. And news content and political content have huge overlap. The thing is, I agree with you. I mean, my sons, your kids often see what you do and they probably want to emulate you at some point. I don't think I would advise my sons to do the same thing. And it's not because I don't agree with you that it's not growing. It's changing. And in many ways, it's going to be easier to break through. But breaking through will just be way different. You're not going to be as big, right? Like, you're not going to be Dan Patrick. Like, Dan Patrick is huge, and there will not be another Dan Patrick. Because you're not going to break through in the same way that he did. So while Bobby's right, the path to success isn't going to be to break through at ESPN. At the same time, you could go start a podcast, and I know you're 100% right. It's totally oversaturated. Or you could start a TikTok, or you could start an Instagram. And I don't know that much about how monetizable all those things are. To be real, they're not. In my experience, they're not hugely monetizable. But there's some guys, like I follow a guy named Nicky Cass. I think Nicky's great, Nick Cass. But he's more comedy, kind of like interwoven with sports, kind of. I bet he's killing it off of Instagram and TikTok. I bet he's killing it. Now, I just think the point is, like, I don't know what you want in life, but that's a tough career to say you're going to map out and go for because there is no map anymore. That's the point. There's no map on how to do it or break through. Where there is with finance and real estate and medicine and law and construction and engineering, there's a map. You could kind of say this is the path, even to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I would encourage people that want to do something like this. Find a topic that you're passionate about, that you're an authority on, that not a lot of other people are covering. It could be a fishing podcast, a podcast about how to fix cars, a podcast about cooking. Often it's easier
that you would do for free. That you would do for free as a hobby.
Right. Yeah. Just talking
and
about
then
Donald
watch
Trump
what it does.
Or sports, that is hard because there are so many people doing it. All right. I think this is our last mailbag question. This is a pretty good one. This is a good note for us to end on. All right, this is from Jonathan in Houston. Guys, how many quarterbacks would you start your team around before you pick Dak Prescott? Ooh.
Start your team around.
So age is a factor.
Not really. I don't think so.
No?
He's 31. I mean, in today's modern NFL, that's 7 years. You could count on 7 years of top play.
No, I mean, like, I would take Aaron Rodgers this year over Dak, but not long term.
Oh, the other way. I thought you were going to value the younger guy. But he said build your team around. So you're not going to build your team around Aaron Rodgers.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean, right? So I'm eliminating Aaron Rodgers from this.
I mean, the answer, I'm not counting quarterbacks right now. Well, we can. But I'm going to bet it's the same where I have him ranked. I bet it's like 5 or 6 guys that you would pick ahead of Dak Prescott. Okay, Mahomes.
Yeah.
Clearly. I think people would pick Josh Allen. I would pick Josh Allen. Although I don't think it's as big of a spread as everybody thinks it is. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. Like all Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen have done is go one game further in the playoffs than Dak Prescott to their conference championship game. Ooh, they haven't broken through. In their defense, I don't know. In their defense, they run headlong into Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Every year. But I'll give you those 3.
Stroud. I think CJ Stroud
we did this
is awesome.
Now, here's the thing about CJ Stroud. Okay. And like even more extreme, Two-A-Day said this today. He'd take Jordan Love over Dak Prescott. You're doing it with so little evidence. Like 1 year CJ Stroud. And I'll just remind you, I don't know what happened to the dude, and we could joke around about it, but everyone would have taken Deshaun Watson over Dak Prescott. And now look at him. Like, he's legitimately a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL. Yeah. And I don't know why, but you are projecting, I know who Dak's going to be for the next 5 to 7 years. okay? The question is it good enough? And you don't know. It's like going to the craps table in Vegas with C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love. You're betting on something that is a high probability of swing either way.
Well, here's where I'd push back. And this is a bit unfair, but it's just the reality. The same quarterbacks keep winning Super Bowls. If you go back to the past 8 years, I believe only 4 quarterbacks have won Super Bowls. It's Mahomes 3 times, Brady twice, Peyton Manning once, and Matt Stafford once. And a lot of that's because of how dominant Brady and Mahomes are. Brady might have even won 3 in that time span. So you have to be almost an all-time great to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. There's obviously some exception years, like Nick Foles got hot, but those are far, far from the usual. I don't know if Dak's that guy. So part of this is I would take the guy who we think could be versus the guy we know is not that guy. My list of people I would take over Dak, I could be missing people, but just off the top of my head, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Stroud, Burrow, Herbert.
I'd give you Burrow. I'll take Burrow over Dak. Who was the last one you said? Herbert? So I think Herbert is escaping. I'm a Herbert fan, but I think Dak, the criticism that goes to Dak is not even-handed in that it's not applied to other guys like Justin Herbert. And I like Herbert. I think he's good. But Herbert hasn't even gone as far as Jackson and Allen, and in fact, has been on teams with losing records. And does Dak ever have a year with a losing record that he played and wasn't injured? I don't think he's ever had a record below 500. And I actually, as I sit there and sound it out, there's just no way you take Herbert over Dak. You don't have any evidence. And here's one other thing. If you're drafted in the first round, you carry that for a long time. Top 5 pick like Herbert, like you're going to keep betting on he's going to be that guy. And Dak's the 4th round pick. And by converse, he's always given them, it's the reputational stigma that stays from when you came in until you're Brady and you can put it in your past. But Herbert's getting the benefit of all this upside because he was a top 5 pick. And he has not proven it in the NFL. And Dak gets none of it by being a 4th round pick. And he's 12-5, 3 straight seasons, always a winning record, 2-5 in the playoffs. I get that. I just don't think the criticism is applied equally to Dak and Allen and Herbert and maybe Jackson.
Would you take Dak over Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy, both of whom took their teams all the way to the Super Bowl, went toe-to-toe with Mahomes?
No doubt. No doubt.
I wouldn't. Jalen Hurts is so much more dynamic.
You would take Jalen Hurts over Dak Prescott? Now you're losing credibility.
Easily. Did you see him Friday night? He can run people over. He's more accurate than Dak. He's won more playoff games. He's had more clutch throws. He's gotten more MVP votes. Absolutely.
You can have them. Fine. This is going to be a fun draft. You can have that. You can have Hurts. You can have, who was the other one you named?
Brock Purdy.
Oh, come on. Brock Purdy is a Kyle Shanahan creation. Would you take Tua over Dak?
No, not Tua. But I would take Stafford over Dak. Why what?
He's 35. He's 35 is the difference on the whole build your team around. I do think, not to give Max Kellerman's Cliff argument credibility, I don't think it's 40. I think most quarterbacks tail off at about 37, 38, and you have to do the actuarial tables on this if you're picking. I'm not saying that Dak's better than Stafford today, but I'm saying with Dak, I get 7 years possibly.
Okay, that's fair.
And with Stafford, I get 2.
Would you take him over Jared Goff?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Jared Goff took his team
You've
all the way.
named 4 that I agree with. I agree with Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, and Burrow. Those are the 4 that I agree with right now, unless I'm forgetting somebody.
You have to put Stroud ahead of him. Stroud in 1 year has been better than Dak ever has been.
Nah.
Well, one more name. I'm going to throw out one more name. Caleb Williams.
He was awful. Game 1.
He has one game.
1-1. Quarterback 1-1. I know. So, one game is more evidence of what you have, which is he was drafted number 1 overall. I'm not a big Caleb Williams guy, by the way, either. In fact, I'd probably take Jaden Daniels. I'd probably take Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams.
I don't see if missed anybody. Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins. No, I mean, I'm taking Dak. I'm just naming them out loud. I would take Dak over that.
Oh, geez, thanks for that. Oh, geez, I appreciate that. Okay. All right, by the way, you can get more of this genius. By the Will Cain Show Fantasy Football League, which Bobby is in. Did you win your first weekend, Bobby? You lost, right?
I have to check. You see what my team name is? It pays homage to our I lost badly actually. So my team is Team
confusing.
Rachel Campos.
Yeah, Rachel.
Her and I are like secret fantasy buddies.
It's confusing.
But I do want to say, just to put this out there, I talked to Rachel over the weekend, and she wasn't impressed by the Cowboys win.
Get out of here.
She wasn't.
Get out of here. All right. An hour and 20 minutes into the Will Cain Show, we're going to end on Rachel Campos Duffy's analysis of the Dallas Cowboys. That's where Bobby Burack is getting his expertise on where Dak Prescott ranks among the teams you'd pick, quarterbacks you'd pick to build your team around. Always fun to hang out with Bobby at Outkick. Go over to Outkick.com. Check out his column on This is a Free Speech Election. Always fun, Bobby. Thank you so much.
You bet, man. Talk soon.
All right. Again, Outkick.com, Bobby Burack. Thanks to Newt Gingrich. Thanks to Ben Domenech. It's been a fun show today. Hopefully we're setting you up for a big night tonight in the ABC presidential debate. I'll see you again next time.